Welcome to Ælementz, your daily source of insights across finance, science, and beyond. Whether you're traveling, taking a lunchtime stroll, or simply relaxing at home, we're committed to providing new content every day, so join us to grow and learn while living your busy life. Today, we're going to talk about inflation, a topic that affects the prices of goods and services and influences our everyday lives more than we might realize. What is inflation? Inflation is the rate at which the general level of prices for goods and services rises, leading to a decrease in the purchasing power of money. In simpler terms, when inflation occurs, you can buy less with the same amount of money than you could before. For example, if a loaf of bread cost £1 last year and £1.15 this year, that's inflation at work. Inflation affects everything from the cost of groceries to the price of a train ticket, and it can have significant impacts on savings, wages, and the overall economy. The history of inflation. The concept of inflation isn't new. It has been a part of economies throughout history. One of the earliest recorded instances occurred during the Roman Empire when the government reduced the silver content in coins to fund military campaigns, leading to higher prices. In the 16th century, Europe experienced significant inflation known as the Price Revolution, partly due to the influx of gold and silver from the New World, which increased the money supply. In more recent times, the hyperinflation in Germany after World War I is a well-known example. To pay for war reparations, the German government printed more money, causing prices to spiral out of control. People needed wheelbarrows full of cash to buy basic items like bread. In the 1970s, many countries, including the UK, faced high inflation rates due to oil price shocks and economic policies, leading to increased costs of living and economic instability. Today, central banks, like the Bank of England, monitor and manage inflation through monetary policies to keep it at a stable and predictable rate, often aiming for around 2% per year. This stability helps consumers and businesses make better financial decisions. How does inflation affect me personally? Inflation impacts your daily life by affecting the prices of goods and services you buy. If your income doesn't increase at the same rate as inflation, you may find it harder to afford the same things over time. For instance, if you're saving money for a future purchase, like a car or a holiday, inflation can erode the value of your savings. Suppose you kept £1,000 under your mattress for 10 years without earning any interest. If inflation averaged 2% per year during that time, your £1,000 would only have the purchasing power of about £820 in today's money. On the other hand, if you have a fixed-rate loan, like a mortgage, inflation can work in your favor. As prices and wages increase over time, the real value of your loan repayments becomes less. This means you're effectively paying back less in today's terms than when you first borrowed the money. What causes inflation? Inflation can be caused by several factors, generally falling into two categories: demand pull inflation and cost push inflation. Demand pull inflation happens when demand for goods and services exceeds supply. For example, if consumers suddenly start buying more houses than are available on the market, house prices will rise. This can occur during economic booms when people have more disposable income. Cost push inflation occurs when the costs of production increase, leading businesses to raise prices to maintain profit margins. An example of this is when oil prices rise significantly. Since oil is a key input for transportation and manufacturing, higher oil prices can increase the cost of many products, leading to inflation. Additionally, inflation can be influenced by monetary factors, such as an increase in the money supply. If a central bank prints more money without a corresponding increase in economic output, the extra money can lead to higher prices. Is inflation always a bad thing? Inflation isn't necessarily bad. Moderate inflation is often seen as a sign of a growing economy. It encourages consumers to make purchases sooner rather than later, boosting economic activity. For businesses, predictable inflation allows for better planning and investment. However, high inflation can be problematic. It erodes purchasing power quickly, leading to uncertainty and discouraging saving. Hyperinflation, an extreme form of inflation, can devastate economies, as seen in Zimbabwe in the late 2000s, where prices doubled almost daily, making money virtually worthless. Deflation, the opposite of inflation, where prices fall, can also be harmful. It may seem beneficial to consumers, but if people expect prices to keep dropping, they may delay purchases, leading to reduced economic activity and potential job losses. How do governments control inflation? Governments and central banks use monetary and fiscal policies to control inflation. Central banks may adjust interest rates to influence economic activity. For instance, if inflation is rising too quickly, a central bank might increase interest rates. Higher rates make borrowing more expensive and saving more attractive, which can reduce spending and slow down inflation. Another tool is controlling the money supply. Central banks can use measures like quantitative easing or tightening to influence the amount of money circulating in the economy. Fiscal policies involve government spending and taxation. By adjusting these, governments can influence demand in the economy. For example, increasing taxes can reduce consumers' disposable income, lowering demand, and potentially easing inflation. An example of inflation control is the UK's response during the early 1990s. After experiencing high inflation in the late 1980s, the Bank of England raised interest rates, which helped bring inflation down to more manageable levels. The Big Mac Index. The Economist magazine created the Big Mac Index as a fun way to measure purchasing power parity between countries. By comparing the price of a Big Mac hamburger in different nations, it provides an informal gauge of currency valuation and inflation. For example, if a Big Mac costs significantly more in one country than another, it might indicate higher inflation or an overvalued currency in that country. Hyperinflation in Hungary. The highest recorded inflation rate occurred in Hungary after World War II. In July 1946, prices doubled every 15 hours. The Hungarian pengo became so worthless that the government introduced a new currency, the forint, to stabilize the economy. This extreme case highlights the devastating effects hyperinflation can have on a country's economy and society. Shrinkflation Phenomenon. Shrinkflation is when products decrease in size or quantity, while prices remain the same or even increase. This is a way manufacturers cope with rising production costs without noticeably increasing prices. For example, a chocolate bar that used to weigh 200 grams might be reduced to 180 grams, but sold at the same price. Consumers may not immediately notice the change, but they are effectively paying more per unit weight, which is a form of inflation. Inflation is a complex economic concept that affects everyone, influencing the cost of living, savings, and overall economic health. Understanding how it works can help you make better financial decisions, whether it's planning your budget, investing, or simply being aware of how the economy functions. What are your thoughts on inflation? Have you noticed prices rising in your daily life? Or do you have experiences to share about how inflation has affected you? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for being here. If you find this helpful, consider subscribing. More content is on the way, and I hope to see you again.